morning and welcome to the continued study of Romans. We're in Romans chapter 1. Start reading in verse 16. 17, we're still in the introductory phase of the Romans. Verse 16 of Romans chapter 1. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. He's starting to introduce us to into justification by faith. We're going to get into the wrath of God next time. But we see, like I said from the beginning. Well, let me go back a little bit. This is for, like I said last time, this is for the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews and the Gentiles, everybody has the same way of salvation. There's not different ways of salvation for different people groups. The Jews aren't saved a different way than we are. We are saved by faith in Christ alone, Jew or Gentile. It's always been that way. It's faith in Christ. In the Old Testament, there was a lot more types and shadows. They didn't have the revelation that we do. As we go on, we see more of a revelation as we get closer to the New Testament. And as we said before, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. It says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes. If you're trying to live by law, you've got no power. Law is only a mirror showing you your state, that you are undone before God, that you can't live holy. It's a schoolmaster, really. Paul says in somewhere, I forget where exactly, but somewhere in his writings he says the law is a schoolmaster to bring you to Christ. That's all it can do, is show you it gives you no power to overcome sin, to live righteously before God. It only shows you how you're not measuring up. And hence, it should bring you to Christ. And that's we saw that in a couple sessions ago, that the law, even back when they were under law, did that, and the sacrificial system pointed them to Christ. But they were deceived by it, as we are nowadays, because it's good. The law is good. There's no, the law is good, just and holy. The problem is with us, not with the law. We can't obey the law, and that's what God's tried to show us from day one, I guess, of the law. When it was given to them, they said, yeah, we'll keep that, but they didn't. Just as we do the same thing. We see what's good, and yeah, we think we can keep that. Well, we end up not doing it. I'll say it, never do that again. And next thing you know, you're doing it again. And it's like, well, that's the last time I'm doing it. And you go into all kinds of self-effort not to do it again. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. You can deny it. A lot of people, that's where a lot of us are. You deny it. But once your faith is in Christ and in Him crucified alone, suddenly you can see yourself for who you are. You can't really see yourself for who you are unless you understand the cross. We deceive ourselves, think we're better than we are. If you're living close to God, if your faith is in the Christ and Him crucified, and it seems like you're getting worse, maybe it's because you're getting closer to the light. And the light is revealing those things that you never saw in yourself before. Because the closer you get to the light, the more you can see. The further away you get, the less you can see. So if you think you've got nothing wrong with you, maybe you're pretty far from God. Maybe you're self-righteous. We'll get into that a little later here. In the expositor's notes, the last portion, it references to Habakkuk 2:4, and we want to go there, but not right now. For therein, verse 17, therein, in the expositor's note, says, through the cross, is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. We're going to learn later on in here, once we get into justification, probably 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. I think it might be chapters 5. How that God, He cannot justify us and be righteous without this way that He's showing us here. In other words, God in His righteous nature cannot permit sin. He cannot call us just without without us actually being just, which we're not. We can't. I mean, if you're honest and you look through the Bible, you'll see that there's none righteous, no, not one. None of us can measure up. And so how can we be right through God? That's what Jesus accomplished at the cross for us. Now our faith in that, we're totally justified before God, because He looks at the sacrifice, not at us. He looks at Christ, not at us. And that's the only way that God can be just and justify the unjust, or those of us that, have our faith in Christ, but we're, definitely don't measure up. For those of you that think that, well, we're condoning sin, no, this is the only way to overcome sin. The whole problem with man is sin. And that's what the cross does. It's defeated sin, so every sin in your life can be overcome. If you put your faith in Christ, it may take a while, but it has got to go if your faith remains in Christ. Why don't we go to Habakkuk 2:4? That's kind of the point of what I want to talk about today. Verse 4 of Habakkuk 2. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. The expositor's notes. The first phrase of this verse speaks of one who is proud, presumptuous, thinking much of himself, despising others, and who is not straightforward and upright before God. As such, he carries in himself the seeds of destruction. But the just shall live by his faith implies a loving trust in God, confident in His promises, resulting in due performance of His will. This passage can be translated, as to the just, through his faith he shall live. This is the great passage used by the Apostle Paul on the basis of his great argument of faith versus works, Romans 1:17. If you are trying to live by law, self-effort, which is the trap that we all fall in, you're going to be proud, presumptuous, thinking much of yourselves, looking down on others. If you understand the cross and are living the cross, you're not going to be all judgmental of others. If you're all judgmental of others and thinking that you're better than them because you understand that, you're not understanding the cross. You're still living under law. You cannot make a law out of the cross. It's impossible. Totally that the cross and the law does not mix. Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to those who believe. So you cannot mix it. There's, a lot that are saying in the community of the cross that people are making a law out of the cross. It seems that way, but that's not the way it is. They're living under law. They're not making a law out of the cross because you can't. They're using cross verbiage, but that is not, you can't make a law out of it. It's impossible. It's like oil and water, it doesn't mix. And that's the trap we fall into, is we start understanding the cross, we believe it, we know it's right, but we're so ingrained in self-effort that we find ourselves preaching and teaching the cross, believing it, we say, but yet we find ourselves living under law, trying to mix the two. I believe it's chapter 7. It talks about a woman that would be married to 2 different husbands. You're trying to be married to Christ and to the law at the same time. We're dead to the law by virtue of what Christ did at the cross. We're done with the law. You need to die, and that's really what Jesus is saying, take up your cross daily and follow me. You need to die to yourself, to all your self efforts. In my background, I grew up Mennonite, quite conservative. I was born what we would call Amish Mennonite. We'd call them fellowship. Wear suspenders, beards and mustaches in that group. For the guys, you had to have a beard once you're, I believe, part of the church, and just very, lots of laws. And so that's the background I grew up in. I find that a lot of other churches, they may not have as many crazy laws, but it's the same basis. And so we are so grounded in law that it's hard for us to get out, but you need to die to the law, to all your self efforts. We're happy to deny ourselves some pleasure, do such and such every day, read so much of the Bible. We'll do great physical efforts, and that all feeds the flesh. You can be look like the greatest Christian to people, doing all kinds of stuff, but it's all the flesh. And it gives you no power to overcome. But we're very slow and loath to die to all of our self-efforts. Quit trying to live this life from your own power. Live it by the faith of Jesus Christ. Put all your faith in what he did at the cross. When you're tempted, instead of doing such and such to overcome it, you need to ask the Lord to help you. You need to put your faith in the cross to overcome it, but you're going to be tempted, so what do? Ask God, help me to not do this, because you go and try not to do it, you're going to end up doing it anyhow. But God can make a way. I don't care how impossible it looks. It's the failure in a life of a Christian is a buffet line. It's what I find out, some of the most, you think the most holy people actually struggle with the same things you and I do. It's just some people are better at covering it up, and thank God he doesn't, reveal all our dirty laundry to everybody. And that's where, understanding the message of the cross, you have grace with other people. You see that God doesn't just throw me away. He works with me. He's had patience with me, and you do the same to others. So quit trying to live for yourself. Really what it comes down to, in all areas of your life, put your faith in him for everything. Live your life for Christ and his kingdom. And don't be wrapped up in trying to establish your own kingdom, your own righteousness. I don't feel like I'm quite getting across. The Lord just made some of this new to me the other day, and some of this stuff, because we get too carried away trying to provide for our families, do this and do that. Quit trying to live life for yourself and live it for the Lord. And he'll take care of you. Put your faith in him for everything. So remember, the just shall live by faith, not by your self-efforts. Next time we're going to be getting into the wrath of God. We'll maybe introduce it just a little bit here. Verse 18 says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness." There's two different types of wrath of God, thumos and orge, and we'll get into that next time. We're seeing the wrath of God poured out in our failure and sin. That's a part of wrath of God. And then, another one's like the Great Tribulation. We're going to see another part of it, but we'll get into that next time. The power is in the gospel of Christ, not in you. So put your faith in him. Stop living for yourself, by your own power. Live totally in Christ. Put your faith in him. And we'll see you next time. God bless you.